Welcome to the deep dive. We're really glad you are here with us today. For this particular deep dive, we are looking at a stack of sources that, at first glance anyway, might seem like they belong in a middle school classroom rather than, a breakdown of human psychology.
Right.
You might be listening to this while prepping for a major corporate meeting, or maybe you're just wildly curious about how human beings actually connect with each other. Well, today, we're looking at something incredibly foundational. We have a collection of behind-the-scenes style guides, instructional manuals, and transcripts for a beginner English language series.
Yeah, and specifically, it's an A1 to A2 level series.
Okay.
For context, that is the absolute ground floor of language learning.
Right, the very beginning.
Exactly. And the entire focus of the material we're analyzing today is centered around one singular theme, which is talking about things you like.
Which raises a pretty obvious question for you, the listener. You already speak English. You already know how to talk about your hobbies, the music you listen to, the food you eat. Why on earth are we spending time analyzing beginner English dialogues?
Because what we have here is essentially the blueprint of basic communication.
The blueprint.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. When you strip language down to its absolute bare minimum, when you remove all the nuance, the sarcasm, the $10 vocabulary words, and the complex sentence structures, you start to see the exposed structural beams of how we actually build relationships.
Oh.
These production guides aren't just about teaching a student grammar rules or vocabulary. When you read between the lines, they are an absolute masterclass in the psychology of emotional safety. They reveal the surprising power of linguistic constraints, and they highlight the fundamental building blocks of human connection that we, as fluent speakers, completely take for granted.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because looking through these transcripts, I was actually struck by how mechanically they build up a person's identity. The source transcripts feature conversational examples between two main characters, Emily and Paul.
Right, the examples.
And the curriculum starts with the absolute basics of stating simple facts. The guides teach learners to say things like, I like to read, or I like reading. It feels like just putting a tiny stake in the ground.
It is a stake in the ground. But notice how there is a very deliberate, carefully designed progression in how they teach these learners to express the intensity of those feelings.
Progression how?
Well, they don't just throw a dictionary of emotional words at the student. It starts with that baseline statement of preference, I like. But then the instructional guides explicitly tell the teachers to help the learners upgrade their vocabulary to match their enthusiasm.
Ah,
They move the student from I like to I enjoy.
I noticed that. And the style guide makes a specific note about the mechanics of the word enjoy, right?
Precisely. The source notes that enjoy inherently sounds a little stronger, a little more invested than like.
Right.
And mechanically, it typically pairs with ing words. So instead of the static I like to walk, the student learns to say I enjoy walking.
It implies an active, ongoing pleasure.
Exactly. And then, once they master that, the curriculum peaks at the absolute top of the emotional scale with the phrase, I love, which is reserved for intense passion.
What really makes this work in the transcripts are the specific grounded examples they use to demonstrate these concepts. They don't use abstract ideas at all. You have the character Emily, who says she likes reading in the morning with her coffee. She literally calls it a perfect morning.
Yeah, highly relatable.
But then she upgrades her emotion when talking about pop music. She says she loves pop music because it makes her want to dance.
And then look at how they write Paul.
Oh.
Paul says he enjoys cooking. But the dialogue doesn't stop there. It gets specific. He mentions enjoying making a simple tomato sauce and making pasta. But when the topic shifts to music, Paul loves jazz because it's relaxing. It's a gentle, step-by-step escalation of sharing who these characters are.
It is. But if I'm being completely honest, even with the progression from like to love, stating facts about pasta and jazz still feels a bit surface level.
Sure.
At what point does this actually become a masterclass in human connection?
That happens in the very next step. The topic knowledge guide in our sources highlights a critical instruction. Once the learner can state what they like, enjoy, or love, the guide insists, and it is a hard rule on teaching them to add the word because.
Because.
Yes. The core example given in the manual is, I like music because it helps me relax.
Just that one word.
Just that one word. But psychologically, this is a monumental shift in communication. By adding because, the conversation moves from a simple statement of fact to a deeply personal insight. You aren't just sharing a hobby anymore. You are suddenly sharing your internal emotional state.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Saying I like jazz is just a data point. It's a fact you could put on a dating profile or census form.
Right.
But saying I like jazz because it helps me relax tells you something intimate about my life. It implies that maybe I have a stressful job or I struggle to unwind and this music is my remedy.
Exactly.
It's a tiny window into a person's soul, all being taught to someone who maybe only knows 300 words of English.
Exactly. And it forces the listener to realize that we, with our massive vocabularies, often forget to use the word because in our own daily lives.
Oh, that's so true.
We list our preferences to our partners or our colleagues, but we rarely take that extra half second to explain the emotional why behind them.
Which perfectly transitions into something else I noticed while reading through the stack. The dialogues between Emily and Paul feel incredibly punchy,
Yes.
almost unnaturally short. Is that an intentional choice by the writers or just a byproduct of it being beginner material?
Oh, it is highly intentional. In fact, there's a specific document in the stack called the Pronunciation Optimization Source.
Okay.
And it outlines a strict, non-negotiable constraint for all of these learning materials. Whenever possible, sentences must be kept to exactly 5 to 8 words.
5 to 8 words. That is incredibly brief.
What's fascinating here is how strictly the producers enforce this limitation. The style guides are militant about avoiding complex vocabulary. They actually have a published list of banned words for the scriptwriters.
Banned words.
Yeah, words like preference, entertainment, and activity variety are explicitly forbidden from ever appearing in these dialogues.
Wait, they actually ban the word preference?
Yes, the creators are forcing the use of simple, punchy equivalents.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say preference, the guy dictates you have to say, you can't say entertainment, you must say fun, you can't say activity variety, you have to use the word hobby.
Activity variety. That sounds like something you'd read in a corporate human resources manual.
It really is.
And honestly, for you listening right now, there is such a profound lesson here. How often do we, as fluent, fully capable speakers, let big words get in the way of clear communication?
All the time.
Think about the last time you were in a meeting or at a dinner party. We use all this jargon to sound smart, sophisticated, or professional. We say things like, my preference is for entertainment that provides a high degree of activity variety.
Well, what you really mean is, my hobby is reading, or I love playing tennis.
Right. There is a raw, incredibly effective power in just stripping away the jargon and
Yeah.
stating exactly what you mean in 5 to 8 words. But I imagine that speaking in such short, direct sentences leaves you feeling a bit exposed. You don't have any big, confusing words to hide behind.
That is the crucial trade-off. We often use complex language as a shield. We hide behind jargon because it feels safer, more ambiguous, and less personal than being direct.
Yeah.
But these beginner guides don't allow for that shield. They force clarity. And by forcing clarity, they inadvertently force a kind of vulnerability. Saying, I love music in just 3 words leaves zero room for misinterpretation.
Right. It's just out there. It is a direct, naked offering of yourself to the other person.
Yeah.
And because it's so direct, the environment where these conversations happen has to be heavily protected.
That brings up a great point. If you think about it, learning to speak a new language as an adult is a terrifying experience. You essentially feel like a toddler again. You know you are going to make mistakes, you sound foolish, and you're constantly exposed. How do the creators of this series manage that level of anxiety?
They manage it through what we could call the architecture of emotional safety. Our sources include a fascinating document titled The Dialogue Behavior Guide, and it directly addresses the intense vulnerability of the language learner.
What kind of rules do they put in place for that?
The rules of engagement laid out in that behavior guide are uncompromising. They're built entirely around protecting the learner's psychological well-being. The mandates are written in bold text, never criticize the learner, and always show support.
Wow, bold text.
Yeah. It even gives specific instructions to the host or teacher, mandating that they constantly validate the student with phrases like, English is easier when we practice, or that is a good answer. It is a completely engineered synthetic environment of total validation.
The required encouragement phrases really stood out to me too. The guide tells the host to constantly hit the student with a barrage of positivity, phrases like, that's great, nice, that sounds fun, and me too.
Yes.
Imagine walking into a room where the person across from you is contractually obligated to be that aggressively supportive of everything you say.
It lowers the defense mechanisms immediately. But they don't just rely on cheerleading. The guide explicitly instructs the use of humor as a bridge to put people at ease.
Yes, the script directions ask for light humor. The specific example they give in the manual is having a character say, I like pizza maybe too much.
Right, it's a tiny moment of self-deprecation. By admitting a harmless flaw loving pizza too much, the speaker instantly lowers the stakes of the conversation.
It humanizes them.
Exactly. It signals to the learner, hey, I'm not perfect either. This is a safe space to be imperfect.
The characters, Emily and Paul, do this perfectly in their transcripts. When they're practicing their vocabulary about cooking and eating, they hit on this universal truth to get a laugh. One of them says they love to cook, but then they immediately followed up with, nobody likes washing the dishes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't just about good language teaching or making a beginner feel comfortable. What we are looking at is the absolute foundation of psychological safety in any conversation.
Right.
Think about your own life, whether you are managing a team of 50 people navigating a high-stakes project, or you are simply trying to connect with your partner at the end of a long, exhausting day.
The rules apply exactly the same.
Completely. If you actively remove criticism from the initial exchange, if you consciously deploy supportive phrases like, that's great, and me too, and if you use light, self-deprecating humor to show that you don't take yourself too seriously, you create an environment where people actually want to share who they are. You remove the fear of judgment.
It makes you wonder how many everyday conversations we totally derail because we forget those basic rules.
Oh, tons of them.
Someone shares an idea in a meeting, and instead of saying, that sounds fun, tell me more, we immediately jump to critique. We look for the flaws.
We do. But to be fair to real-world dynamics, the curriculum designers don't just keep it all artificially positive and fluffy forever. They recognize that to be a fully actualized person in a conversation, you have to be able to set boundaries. You can't just agree with everything.
Which introduces a tricky problem. If the environment is strictly positive and built on zero criticism, how do these guides teach a learner to express a negative thought without ruining that safety? Saying, I don't like, feels like it could break the spell.
It's a huge hurdle. Teaching people how to respectfully express what they dislike is fundamental to their autonomy. It's how we define the edges of our personality.
Yeah.
If you only ever say what you like, you aren't really communicating. You're just conforming. The ability to say, I don't like, empowers the learner to navigate the world on their own terms.
The examples they use in the transcripts to introduce this are delightfully low stakes. Paul simply states that he doesn't like tea. He establishes that he likes coffee, but he explicitly doesn't like tea.
Very safe topic.
Emily talks about her shopping habits. She notes that she likes shopping for books and food, but she explicitly says she doesn't like shopping for clothes because it can be tiring. The guide also has examples of people talking about how they don't like cold weather or rainy days. It's a very gentle way of introducing friction.
But even introducing that mild friction, talking about weather or tea, can be incredibly stressful for a beginner. Saying, I don't like, feels inherently confrontational when you don't fully grasp the language. The curriculum designers clearly anticipated this anxiety, which leads to one of the most clever instructional choices in the entire source stack.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
They introduce a proxy.
A proxy, like a dummy target for them to practice on.
Exactly. To practice all these newly learned phrases, likes, loves, and doesn't like the guide, introduces a fictional third person named Alex.
Alex.
Right. Emily and Paul practice making sentences about this imaginary guy. They say things like, Alex likes to wake up early. Alex loves drinking orange juice for breakfast. Alex loves to cook dinner. But then, crucially, they practice the negative on him. Alex doesn't like coffee in the evening, and he doesn't like washing the dishes.
That is brilliant. I hadn't thought about the psychology of that. By talking about a third party, even a completely fictional one, it completely removes the pressure from the learner.
It acts as a pressure release valve. The student doesn't have to search their own soul or risk being judged for their own preferences. If they say Alex doesn't like coffee, nobody is going to argue with them or ask them why.
They don't have to defend it.
No defense needed. They can practice the mechanics of boundary setting, the actual grammar of disagreement, in a completely sterile, safe environment. It builds muscle memory for expressing dislikes without the emotional weight of personal vulnerability.
It's essentially a sandbox for human personality. You practice having boundaries on Alex before you have to defend your own boundaries in the real world. That is such a fascinating approach to conflict resolution.
It really is.
So once they've mastered stating facts, adding emotional weight with the word because, and setting boundaries through the Alex exercise, where does the curriculum go next?
It takes them to the final frontier of basic human connection,
Which is?
the future. The instructional materials transition the learners to a very specific phrase, I would love to.
I would love to, which feels like a pretty big jump from talking about what you eat for breakfast.
It represents a massive cognitive leap. Up until this point in the curriculum, the learners have been entirely grounded in the present tense, what they like right now, what their daily habits are, what they currently avoid.
Right, the here and now.
But giving them the phrase, I would love to, instantly unlocks their ability to share their dreams, their goals, and their future plans. It takes the conversation from the mundane reality of today to the aspirational possibilities of tomorrow.
The transcripts really highlight how beautiful this shift is. In one of the dialogues, Emily gets asked what she would love to do. She doesn't talk about her morning routine anymore. She says she would love to visit Italy for the food, specifically the pasta, and she also reveals that she would love to learn to play the guitar.
And Paul's answers are just as aspirational.
Right, Paul says he would love to learn how to speak Spanish because he thinks it's a beautiful language, and he would love to visit Japan. It's amazing to think that in just 5 words, I would love to learn, these characters, and the real students mimicking them, are suddenly sharing their deepest hopes.
And psychologically speaking, that is where the deepest human connection happens. When you share a goal or a dream with someone, you are inviting that person into your future. You are showing them who you want to become, not just who you happen to be right now.
Wow.
The source material points this out perfectly in the teacher's notes, explicitly stating that this phrase is a fantastic way to talk about goals because it instantly deepens the relationship between the speakers.
It's the difference between asking someone at a networking event, what do you do for a living, versus asking them, what would you love to do? One gives you a resume, the other gives you a heartbeat.
Exactly.
We have gone from the basic mechanics of I like to read, all the way to the vulnerability of I would love to visit Japan. And the ultimate goal of all of this, as summarized perfectly in the wrap-up notes of our sources, is that asking the question, what do you like to do, is never actually a vocabulary test.
No, it's a radar ping.
Exactly. Emily and Paul literally say this in their final transcript dialogue. You ask the question, you listen to the answer, and you use it as a radar ping to find common ground. You are looking for the overlap, like discovering you enjoy the same kind of movies, or that you both love jazz music. It's this perfectly engineered method to connect with people. So what does this all mean?
I think this stack of beginner English guides serves as a profound mirror to hold up to our own daily interactions. I'd ask you, the listener, to really reflect on this today.
Yeah.
As a fluent speaker, you have this massive, complex vocabulary at your disposal. You know tens of thousands of words. You can use incredibly nuanced sentences to express a single thought. But with all that immense linguistic power, are you actually communicating your core likes, your personal boundaries, and your future dreams as effectively and clearly as these beginner guides instruct?
That is the real question. Do we get so lost in the noise of our own complex sentences, trying to sound smart, trying to sound professional, that we forget the fundamental goal of communication, which is simply to connect with the person across from us?
We often forget that at the end of the day, underneath all the professional jargon and complex social dynamics, everybody just wants to know if you also enjoy funny movies, or if you also harbor a secret hatred for washing the dishes. It is the simple 5 to 8 word truths that actually bind us together.
It really is. It has been amazing exploring this unique set of sources with you today. To think that breaking language down to its absolute simplest forms, just stating basic preferences, adhering to strict word counts, and providing mandated, deep emotional support can reveal so much about the true essence of how human beings build relationships.
It's a powerful reminder that communication isn't about how many words you know, it's about how you use them to build a bridge. And I want to leave you with a final lingering question to mull over as you go about your day.
Let's hear it.
We've established that communicating with a strict 8-word limit and a mandate of absolute zero criticism creates a warm, engaging, and deeply connected environment for a terrified language learner. What would happen if you applied those exact same rules to your complex everyday conversations tomorrow? If you forced yourself to speak in short, simple truths, stripped away all your defensive jargon, and offered nothing but support to the person listening to you, would it strip away the noise? Would it bring you closer to the people around you?
What an incredible challenge to walk away with. Try it out. Test it at your next corporate meeting, or use it tonight at your family dinner. Keep your words simple, keep your tone supportive, and just see what happens to the dynamic in the room. Thank you again for joining us for this deep dive, and as always, keep diving deep.